For more than 6 decades, the world of cinema placed Julie Andrews inside a single frame: perfection. From the floating umbrella of Mary Poppins to the gentle nun Maria among the Austrian hills in The Sound of Music, she appeared as the embodiment of purity, grace, and timeless elegance. Audiences adored her because they believed that behind that flawless image was a life just as serene and refined as the songs she once sang. But at the age of 89, Julie Andrews decided to set that mask aside. In deeply honest memoirs, she no longer wished to satisfy those who expected an untouchable legend. She opened the door to a life where saintliness was only one piece of the picture, while the rest was filled with sharp edges, painful stumbles, and even words far removed from the polished scripts people imagined. We often admire heroes when they shine, yet rarely ask what happens inside their souls when they spend an entire lifetime carrying the crushing weight of perfection. Was it truly the privilege of fame, or was it a beautifully crafted glass cage that quietly imprisoned the woman inside it? Let us travel backward through time, stepping away from the glittering films to discover the real Julie Andrews, a woman who learned to survive from the broken pieces of her childhood, only to later shatter the very image she had unintentionally created. Julie Andrews was not born into glamorous theatres or elegant stages. Her real name was Julia Elizabeth Wells, and she grew up in England surrounded not by lullabies, but by the instability of a family torn apart by alcoholism. Both her mother and stepfather struggled heavily with drinking, turning her home into a place filled with uncertainty and unnamed fear. To survive, Julie was forced to grow up far earlier than most children. Some nights, young Julia would install locks on her bedroom door herself, trying to protect herself from her stepfather during his drunken outbursts. There was no sheltering warmth, no carefree childhood dreams. Instead, she found safety in the extraordinary talent she had been born with. By the age of 9, people were already watching her stand atop beer crates in pubs, singing with a crystal-clear voice that felt like a quiet rebellion against the poverty and despair surrounding her. Her career did not begin from artistic ambition alone. It began as a means of survival. As a teenager, Julie became the primary breadwinner of the family, carrying the burden of buying homes and supporting relatives financially, an overwhelming responsibility for someone so young. But the greatest shock arrived when she was 15 years old and discovered a devastating family secret. The man she believed to be her stepfather was not biologically related to her, and her real father was actually a close family friend. That revelation shattered her understanding of herself. Yet amid betrayal and emotional chaos, Julie did not collapse. Those difficult years forged an iron will within her, teaching her that survival depended entirely on her own ability to stand strong. It was that storm-filled foundation that later shaped the resilient Julie Andrews, who could face Hollywood's pressures without ever surrendering her sense of self. The hardships of her youth refined a remarkable 4-octave voice, carrying Julie Andrews from tiny English pubs to the dazzling lights of Broadway. There, she was not merely an actress, she became a phenomenon. Her performances in The Boyfriend, and especially as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, transformed her into one of New York's most sought-after stars. Audiences were mesmerized by her ethereal appearance and impossibly pure voice, as though it had been distilled from something almost heavenly. Yet Broadway's spotlight was never free from cruelty. The greatest heartbreak of her career arrived when the film adaptation of My Fair Lady entered production. Despite creating the role on stage and giving it its soul, Julie was cast aside. Hollywood, driven by commercial calculations, chose a more established film star instead, abandoning the woman who had made the character unforgettable. It was a painful blow to her pride, forcing her to understand that talent alone could still lose to business decisions. But precisely when she felt betrayed by the industry she had dreamed of conquering, another door opened in spectacular fashion. Walt Disney recognized in her not merely a beautiful voice, but a magnetic presence unlike any other. He cast her in Mary Poppins, a decision that became cinematic history. With her very first film role in 1964, Julie Andrews won the Academy Award for Best Actress, a triumph few performers ever achieve. Success followed success with The Sound of Music in 1965, Her portrayal of Maria, singing across mountain hillsides in a simple nun's dress, elevated her into a global symbol of hope and pure-hearted love. Yet even as the world celebrated her, Julie began to feel trapped by the image itself. Every smile, every gesture, every public appearance became inseparable from the saintly characters audiences worshipped. She had traded freedom for admiration, and slowly, the question of how to escape that flawless persona began haunting the woman standing at the peak of fame. To the public, Julie Andrews appeared untouchably perfect. Few realized that behind those beloved classics existed physical exhaustion and a spirit desperate to break free. On the set of The Sound of Music, the breathtaking hilltop scenes audiences remember as magical were, in reality, physically punishing. The force of the helicopter blades repeatedly knocked her into mud and grass, forcing her to perform the same sequence again and again while bruised and exhausted. Even the iconic blonde hairstyle audiences admired came from a disastrous dye job that accidentally turned her hair bright orange, leaving the production team scrambling desperately to fix it before filming continued. Behind that graceful image, Julie Andrews later admitted that she possessed a vividly cheeky spirit beneath the surface. If Mary Poppins symbolized perfect order and discipline, the real Julie once shocked Walt Disney himself after accidentally blurting out a profanity following a painful fall during a flying wire stunt. She was never a goddess descending untouched from the heavens. She was a real woman, someone who could swear, smoke under crushing pressure, and even challenge the boundaries of the very characters she portrayed. One of the most fascinating details was hidden within Mary Poppins' costume itself. Beneath the proper and elegant exterior was a brightly colored lining that Julie absolutely adored. To her, it represented a private message. Even when the outside world demanded flawless composure, deep within lived a woman full of color, mischief, and a spirit that refused to surrender to rigid expectations. This was not a betrayal of the character. It was Julie Andrews quietly reclaiming ownership of her own identity. Perfection, to her, was merely a costume, and she understood exactly when to remove it in order to reconnect with the fearless woman beneath. If the stage was where Julie Andrews shined as an icon, real life was where she learned how to be a woman burdened with deeply human emotions. Her first marriage to designer Tony Walton, while giving her daughter Emma, eventually ended in heartbreak. But it was not until she met director Blake Edwards in 1969 that she truly found the companion who would change her life, a relationship that strangely began in the office of a psychiatrist. Their marriage was far from the fairy tale audiences imagined. Together, they built a deeply bonded blended family, even adopting 2 Vietnamese daughters, Amy and Joanna, during one of the most turbulent periods in modern history. Yet behind the warm family photographs existed another battle entirely. Blake Edwards' struggles with depression and chronic health problems. For more than 4 decades, Julie Andrews chose the role of devoted caretaker. She was not simply a star. She became the emotional anchor that helped Blake survive his darkest moments. Many fans romanticized their marriage as flawless, but in reality, Julie's endurance revealed a far more mature kind of love, one built on acceptance, patience, and the willingness to carry another person's pain. That quiet sacrifice revealed a side of Julie Andrews the cameras rarely captured. She became a mother, a wife, and someone capable of carrying the emotional wounds of others, even while wrestling with her own hidden storms. The compassion she showed would never be engraved on trophies or awards, yet it became the invisible foundation that kept her standing before she faced one of the most devastating tragedies of her life. For a singer blessed with a 4-octave voice, the vocal cords are not merely part of the body. They are the soul itself, the bridge connecting an artist to millions of hearts around the world. But in 1997, fate delivered a devastating blow to Julie Andrews. A surgery intended to remove small nodules from her vocal cords went terribly wrong. After the operation, the crystal-clear soprano voice that had enchanted generations was permanently damaged. Imagine a bird that spent its entire life soaring freely through the sky suddenly losing its wings. The soaring high notes that once defined her identity were replaced with painful silence. Julie later admitted she fell into complete despair. "If I cannot sing, then who am I?" It was not merely a question about career, but about identity itself. For more than 50 years, her voice had been inseparable from her sense of self. The loss was not only personal, it shook popular culture itself. Fans across the world were heartbroken, while Hollywood stood stunned before the silence of one of the greatest voices in cinematic history. Yet within that painful silence, the resilience of the little girl who first stepped onto a stage at 9 years old emerged once again. Julie Andrews refused to surrender to bitterness or grief. Instead, she began searching for a new voice in an entirely different way. Though she could no longer sing as before, she turned toward voice acting, where her matured and gentle tone brought warmth and wisdom to characters like Queen Lillian in the Shrek films. She also devoted herself to writing books, using stories rather than songs to connect with younger generations. That determination proved something extraordinary. Julie Andrews did not need her singing voice to remain remarkable. She remained remarkable because even after losing the very thing the world treasured most about her, she still found the strength to continue telling her story. She did not take on these scenes to chase cheap attention or meaningless rebellion. It was her way of sending a message to the world. She was a versatile actress, a real woman of flesh and blood, not a porcelain doll trapped forever inside a glass display case. Julie Andrews refused to spend her entire life confined to roles of nannies and nuns because those characters were only fragments of her artistic identity, not the entirety of who she truly was. That determination also revealed itself in the way she confronted society's expectations about her personal image. In later interviews, when faced with questions about the purity of the characters she portrayed, she responded with striking honesty and sharp humor. Does Mary Poppins have orgasms? Does she go to the bathroom? I assure you, she does. It was not vulgarity. It was a demand to reclaim her humanity. By bringing the untouchable, saintly image back down to earth, Julie Andrews finally freed herself from the cage others had built around her. She wanted audiences to understand that behind the radiant smiles and immortal songs existed a woman who could love, desire, suffer, and experience every deeply human instinct. To Julie, that was true perfection, not flawlessness, but the courage to live honestly in every dimension of life. Now, at the age of 90, Julie Andrews no longer needs to prove anything to Hollywood or to the public. The wrinkles upon her face are not merely marks of time. They are the map of a remarkable journey that began in the darkness of a troubled childhood, passed through the blinding heights of fame, and arrived at the quiet strength she carries today. Her legacy is far greater than awards or legendary performances. Her true legacy lies in the courage to confront pain, to abandon the safety of the glass cage, and to live authentically as a real woman. She taught us that perfection is not required in order to deserve love, and that sometimes the bravest act a person can commit is learning to embrace the broken pieces of themselves. Looking back now, Julie Andrews still carries the sincerity and optimism that illuminated millions of lives for decades. But this time, that light comes not from a fictional character or a polished performance, but from the wisdom earned through her own lived experience. And what about you? After walking through the contradictions and triumphs of this woman who refused to be confined by any single image, what do you find most meaningful? Have we become too demanding of our idols, expecting them to remain flawless monuments forever? Or is it precisely their imperfections that make them unforgettable? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we reflect together on the quiet but powerful moments behind these legendary lives. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can join us for the next character profile, where we continue uncovering the shadows and light hidden behind the glamour of fame.